Welcome to part 2 of our video on what good are microbes. And we've talked about decomposition, producing oxygen in normal flora, and now we're going to talk about food production. So I'm just going to use a black pen here, and put food production, which is another very important role of microbes. And I'm going to highlight this, put a box around it in yellow. And then I'm going to give you a few examples. I have on here Grace Harbor Farmed yogurt, which just happens to be one of my favorites in the world. I go through a couple giant containers of this every week, along with a few of my other favorite yogurts. And yogurt is the classic fermented food. So what happens is lactobacillus that occur naturally in the environment ideally, although usually to make yogurt at home you would add it. It will feed on the milk sugar, and what it does then is it uses the milk sugar to make ATP, and as a byproduct it produces lactic acid, which causes yogurt to have a sour taste. And the health benefits of this are far and wide, because first of all, when you eat yogurt or any other fermented milk product, you are then getting lactobacillus into your body. And although this species might not be able to live there all the time, like it might not be able to colonize regularly, even if it's just passing through, it can inhibit other diseases, which we had been talking about in part 1. And then also, it's believed that the lactic acid itself, so basically the sour part of yogurt, serves some health functions as well. And lastly, I would say that the fact that it's reducing the sugar has health benefits, as opposed to just plain milk that has 12 grams of sugar, reducing the sugar in your diet. And there was something else I was going to say. Although it's currently under research, there's some thoughts on the different types of remaining sugar in milk, and whether some of those things are actually what we call prebiotics, which help to feed the good bacteria in your body. So all kinds of good reasons to have fermented milk products. Then cheese is similar. So here I'll highlight yogurt like this, and then cheese will be our next one we'll talk about. So cheese is also fermented milk, but it's been aged longer, and a lot of the liquid portion has been removed, and so it becomes more solid with age. So it's fermented milk, and sometimes, depending on the cheese type, it also has mold. And those can give great value to the cheeses, like, what have you got, like blue cheese and gorgonzola. There's a variety of very famous different types. And in fact, I kind of can go off on a tangent about this because I love this topic so much, but cheese is often named for the location that it came from, or the small town in France where there was a cave where they used to keep the cheeses, and those molds that then grew on this big cheese round were only found in that part of the world. So there's some sadness amongst cheese aficionados because they feel that as cheese production has been commercialized, the unique molds that used to make up cheeses in special locations are now being lost. So it's sort of like moving back toward a smaller brewing like they've done for beer, and with cheese there's finding those local cheeses and preserving them. Anyway, I love that topic. So bread is next, and let's see. Bread is also made with microbes. It requires mold, but it's not really a mold. It's a yeast, but it is a fungus. Saccharomyces, and the most common species will be Cerevisiae, and wait for it because we'll be talking about beer here in a second too. But this isn't the only kind of species, but the most common probably. So Saccharomyces literally means sugar mold, and this is a yeast that is used for baking bread. So what the yeast does is, just like the lactobacillus did, the yeast will eat the sugar that's in the bread, but instead of giving off lactic acid, the yeast will give off carbon dioxide that makes the bread rise. It will also give off ethanol, but then when the bread is baked, the ethanol evaporates. So if there is also lactobacillus, which there would have been in, traditional breads, because lactobacillus was basically everywhere, then you have a combination of a bacteria, lactobacillus, and a mold, Saccharomyces, and these two together would then be both eating the sugar, and you end up with sour bread or sourdough bread. Virtually all leavened breads in traditional cultures would have been sourdough, and it's only in more recent times that they've refined that so that sometimes you only have the yeast in the bread. Okay, so then let's not forget Saccharomyces cerevisiae's important role in the production of alcohol. There's a little martini right here. And alcohol is made thanks to microbes. And specifically, what the microbes produce is ethanol. That's the kind of alcohol that people drink. And it's when Saccharomyces, again, I'm going to write it out again, but it's the same organism. So this literally means sugar. That's what saccharomyces means. Myces means mold. So sugar mold. And cerevisiae means beer or alcohol. And so this organism will eat the sugar that's in grain. And I think that's how you get like spirits, more like a vodka, or fruit, and specifically grapes, and that's how we get wine, and then other aspects of grain or hops, and you can get beer. So all of these things can be fermented. In fact, you can ferment rice, and you can make a form of kefir, or you can ferment tea, and you can make kombucha. So maybe I should put some of these other beverages. So kombucha does have a little bit of alcohol in it. It depends on where you buy it, whether they say it has, measurable amounts. Then there's kefir, which is a combination. It's basically like a yogurt and a grain that's fermented. And then there is kimchi. Notice these all start with a K. That's interesting. And this is of like Korean fermented vegetables. Okay, so anyways, you can ferment any vegetables. Like, pickles, if they're naturally made and they have been fermented, then they are a fermented food. So all of these are examples of food products. So let's see, bread, cheese, then I said sourdough bread, and alcoholic beverages. Things like pepperoni, you can have fermented meats. So the other thing I wanted to add that I didn't have on this page originally, but I'd like to put down here, is that we use microbes to fight other microbes. And a lot of molds, such as penicillium, so I'll say, for example, penicillium. Oh, Roquefort. That reminds me of another moldy cheese. And sometimes those cheeses have antibiotics in them because these molds produce antibacterial chemicals that we then can purify, and we call them antibiotics. So that is the beginning of antibiotics, which I talked about a little bit in my video on the history of microbiology. But antibiotics essentially come from a lot of molds and sometimes from other bacteria. And the reason that these organisms make them is to outcompete, because they want to live, let's say, on the same surface or on the same food source. And so if they give off these chemicals that inhibit the growth of other microbes, then they have a selective advantage. And then we can harness that and use that in order to treat people that are sick. Okay, so let's highlight that one with orange. Now, I think I might be running out of room on my phone. I'm happy to tell you I am buying a storage disk so that I can hold more video on here before my stupid phone runs out of time. But the last thing, assuming that I have time to finish it, over here, this will be number 6 now instead of number 5. I just want to show you a little bit about how we culture bacteria in the lab, because so much of microbiology is hands-on in the lab. So when you're studying microbes, and let's see, what color have I not used? Red, orange, yellow. I've used them all. So we'll go back to blue, okay? So when we're studying microbes, you want to have Petri plates with growth media on them. So for example, if this is a Petri plate and you have some kind of like agar type, which is it comes from seaweed, and it's sort of like a jello, and it hardens in the bottom of the Petri plate, and then you can put whatever food or chemicals you want in there, and then you put you add the bacteria and you let it grow for a couple of days, and then it will multiply, possibly, and you will have a whole bunch more of it. But then sometimes you can put like a color indicator into the agar, so if it's able to grow on the Petri plate, it might actually give off like an acid that changes it from red to yellow. And so this color change can be helpful if you're trying to identify what bacteria it is you're working with. So it can may indicate, well, I'm going to say it can be helpful. Can be helpful in identifying the bacteria species. So we'll do a lot of this in lab, where you grow bacteria on a particular agar plate that's red, and if you come back in 2 days and it's yellow, you're like, oh, I think I know what bacteria it is, because only certain bacteria have the ability to change it to yellow. So that's a really cool thing we do. And then sometimes you'll grow stuff in a test tube, and it's the same concept though. It's just that you can't grow quite as much in the test tube as you can on the plate. And you add your bacteria. We call this inoculate. So we inoculate the test tube with the bacteria. We let it grow for a couple days. So usually 2 days is how much we do, at least in micro lab. Usually 2 days is common, but you could get results in a day. And then when you come back, once again, you'd be like, oh, cool, it changed color. I think I know what bacteria this is, or something along those lines. So microbes serve a lot of great functions. I'm going to wrap up this video by zooming out for you. So what good are microbes? They're good for decomposition, they produce oxygen, they help inhibit disease by covering our body inside and out, they are used in food production, we can use their chemicals to fight off other microbes, and we use things like Petri dishes and test tubes with agar in them and color indicators in them as a major way that we study microbes in the lab. Okay, I'll see you in the next video.